Hey everyone, this is a quick video to give you all some insights into the new class system released this week. So what we've got is class systems for all the troop classes, archery, infantry, cavalry, all of those. So what you'll see now is when you go into one of your troops, you've got this convert option here, and that will allow you to have a look. You can stay at the original one, which is just your basic, say, infantry, archer, or cavalry. Otherwise, you can convert to two different other types. So if we look at Merlin, for example, he can actually change to an archer class, or he can stay as infantry and it's just more of an advanced type of class. Now, not every troop can actually change to a different class like this. Many of them will just sort of stay at their original class, but it'll just be a enhanced or different version of that class. However, it doesn't open up a lot of new capabilities. If it does change class, there's quite a few where you can flip some new teams that weren't quite possible before. So it opens up a lot of new avenues. And I do want to confirm that if a troop does change class, it receives its new class bonus and loses its old class bonus. So for instance, a popular one may be Sphinx. If we change him, we can change him over to a cavalry. That will actually lose the archer bonus and gain the cavalry bonus. So maybe quite a popular option, converting him to some types of chase teams, for instance, that weren't quite possible before. Well, they were possible, but you just didn't get that cavalry bonus. So are these class changes visible in the battle reports? What kind of information can we see? Well, there is a little bit of information in the battle reports about the classes. As we can see here, we have Ma'at and Brito, who have both been converted to the Javelin class. So what we see here is the pre-battle lineup. We have the Brito and Ma'at damage caused by attacks increases by 10%, and damage caused by spirit attacks increases 10%. So they are visible in here. You can also see that Ma'at being converted from an infantry to an archer does obtain that archery bonus in the battle as well, which is very nice to see. So one thing to look at first is, although it's all well and good to look at these as an upgraded type, they do come with some downsides, and one of the downsides easily overlooked is the cost. So if you look at the bottom here, for instance, here's the cost differences, and this is just by how much it increases. So if you have a look here, it's quite a significant amount, and it also increases the upkeep with your other resources as well. So it doesn't seem like much, but once you've got 5, 10, 15 fully maxed out armies that are all advanced, this is going to be quite a big drain on the resources. So it's definitely going to change things and make resources a little more important in the later seasons, when majority of people have all these new classes unlocked. So as I said, there are positive effects and there are negative effects. If we look at some of the positive effects, these are more so related to in combat, more so than the resource drain. So for instance, let's just look at Cavalry Archer. This is quite an interesting one because it changes your troop to the cavalry class. Keep in mind the strengths and weaknesses part up here, it's not really strengths and weaknesses. What that's really just saying is what it's good at attacking against infantry type. I don't know why they've got weaknesses here, because really the weaknesses for this would be your archer class now. So when it says infantry type here, with strengths and weaknesses, it's really just talking about what it's good at attacking. So if we look at Cavalry Archer, its other benefits: greatly reduces damage from chase skills. So it's a little bit ambiguous how they word this, but what that actually means is, no, it doesn't reduce the damage that Sphinx will do with its chase. It actually reduces the damage that Sphinx will receive from chase attacks, which is actually quite powerful. If you've got an all cavalry archer team and you face up against a chase team, you're going to win pretty handedly. So it's quite a nice benefit. If you've got him right on the back, he's not really going to be attacked by too many chase skills. So you definitely got to keep in mind, is this going to be beneficial to this type? If you look at his other benefits he gets, if he switches over here, first 2 times he's attacked, the damage can be avoided. That's always nice to have on anything, even in the back row, because the back row is going to get attacked at least once or twice. So you can completely mitigate that, which is nice. Learning both the cavalry and archery skills, it's not much of a benefit for like a chase card like Sphinx, but it will be useful on other cards. And then you've got, here's an example of one of the negative effects, cream of the crop. So that's affecting how many wounded can recover, and if I touch on that, something that could be quite overlooked for a lot of cards. I can see people looking at these types of class changes as immediate buffs, and in some cases it's going to be beneficial not to change your cards at all. So be careful of using some of these classes on your tank cards that decrease wounded soldier recovery. So let's take a look at this army here. I've got Aeneas as the tank. So what can he convert to? Obviously his role here is just a sort of tank. This one's set up for a little bit of stun control as well. So he's got the options of light cavalry. And if we take a quick look here, it's immediately obvious that this isn't really much of a benefit for him. He's not going to get much benefit from increasing damage output by 18% for the first 2 turns. That's not really his role. He's going to take 8% more damage for the entire duration of the fight. So that's going to do more harm than good, plus it's going to cost a lot more resources. And then his other option is Temple Cavalry. Now, some of that mitigation is quite nice. However, keep in mind it's only when they're in some sort of stun, which may or may not be that often. If you've got a card that's immune to stuns, and there are some out there, you definitely want to make sure you don't put ones like this on, because they're obviously not going to become in this effect, and all they're going to receive is the increased consumption of resources, and then they're also going to get this negative effect, cream of the crop. So that's going to mean that every time they come back, they're going to have less wounded recovery. So with this wounded recovery, what this means is, let's say for instance you have 20,000 troops and they finish a battle and take 5,000 losses. Now roughly 2,000 of those losses might be wounded, which completely recover automatically when that army gets back to the city or the fort. The front troop usually takes the most damage, so if you reduce this recovery percentage, then you might be left with the rear and middle troops conscripting for maybe 10 minutes and the front troop conscripting for a really long time. So even more than usual for a tank. That's just because when their wounded get back, obviously they're only going to get 90% of that back again. So they've already taken the most losses. So it's really something to keep in mind. You could run out of militia very quickly by trying to keep that in check if you've got one of your front cards that has one of these class debuffs. So weigh up the benefits. This is an example where this wounded debuff might be acceptable. So if we look at Perseus, for example, he can switch from archer to an infantry. If you look at this, it reduces all incoming damage by 10%. So that's enough to negate the wounded recovery effect by 10%. It's a fair trade. Other class changes might not be that forgiving, so be careful of other ones. If we come back to Aeneas, he doesn't really have many options. This light cavalry we looked at isn't an option. His other option, Temple Cavalry, is not really going to do much else either. So just be really careful of some of these ones. If they're going to take a lot of damage on the front line, you really want to be careful of this wounded reduction. So having said that, it's perfectly okay if you've got a card and you don't upgrade the class. There are going to be cards out there, whether they're epic or legendary, that just don't quite receive enough benefit to warrant being upgraded. That's just particularly important for those, as I touched on. those cavalry tanks have the heavy cavalry option. So if they've got the light cavalry or temple cavalry option, it's not so good for tanking. You may just want to consider leaving them at the standard class. If you did want to go somewhere for a cavalry tank and you've just got these options, temple cavalry will be the slightly better option. However, it's not going to be much of an effect for you. In most cases, it would be the last thing that you would want to upgrade. You would want to do all your other more important class changes on your other cards first. So what are the best classes? Well, there's no one best class. It all depends on your army setup and the skills you're using. There are some classes that are consistently strong, such as a Javelinier for the Archer class. Yeah, that's just a straight up buff of 10%. So if we look at that, increases all damage output by 10%. There's no negative effects other than obviously the resource increase. So that's going to be a very popular one that pretty much applies to almost all archery cards. So how do we upgrade our cards to these new classes? So if we click on a card and we have this convert option in the arms area, we can then select our class on whichever one we want to choose. So for instance, for this, we'll pick Javelinier. And you can see in the unlock requirements, there's 2 epic cards. That's pretty straightforward. So that's for your epic. If you're going to change it for a legendary, it's going to either cost 1 legendary card or 10 epic cards. I would definitely recommend just using epics. It's really not something that you're going to get much benefit from by using legendary cards unless you've completely maxed out every card available and advanced them all. Definitely save your legendaries for using them in your armies, dismantling skills, or advancing your other legendaries' 3rd skill slot. So definitely wait for the epics on there. That just the increase and the benefit you get just isn't quite enough to use a legendary, especially when you've got epics available. And everyone should have plenty of epics available. So let's do this one. It's only going to cost us 2 cards. So if we just pick a random card, so I've got 2 here because he's been enhanced once, and then I'll just click unlock. So that unlocks this class for me to use later. So it hasn't actually activated it yet on the card, but as you can see here, it's no longer grayed out. And a couple people are wondering, does this carry over onto the next season? Well, yes, the card will remain unlocked for whatever classes you have unlocked. However, to activate that, it costs your skill points, but it's a different kind of points. So that will be reset at the start of every season. However, you will have that option to convert them in the next season without having to pay more epics to unlock them. So what are these requirements, you ask? What are these sort of new type of skill points required? Well, these are essentially just your class points. So if you see at the bottom of this card, it's got that plus option, and this takes you into your convert menu. You can convert epic cards as well. However, generally it's not that worth it. You just use your 3-star cards, and you'll get plenty of currency. You get 20 per, whereas with an epic you're really only going to receive 40. So is 2 3-star cards worth more than an epic? You be the judge of that. I'm definitely just going to be using 3-star cards, especially when you're going to be converting all your legendaries eventually, or most of them. It's going to cost 10 cards, so you might want to save them. One thing that you want to do almost straight away is you want to go into your summon menu and you want to change this option to uncommon. What that's going to do is allow you to stockpile those 3-star cards, and you're going to be using those 3-star cards from now on to upgrade your class. So now if we go on to convert, we've got more than enough points. We've got over 500, which is required for this class. So we click on it here and we just press convert, and then it's as easy as that. And there we go. You can see this option down the bottom right corner of the card has slightly changed, so that indicates what class status you're now using for that card. So she's just going to receive just a nice 10% buff to damage, and then you're going to want to change your skills accordingly. I may now want to switch off Pacify because that's not a damage skill, and I might want to put more damage skills on her just to get the maximum benefit of that. If I had another card in this class that wasn't quite receiving that damage benefit from a class, then I can put those other sort of mitigation or healing type skills on it. You always want to sort of have the full effect of skills, classes that you can get, and use those skills to maximize your damage output. So if you're wondering, can I convert a card back to its original class, or can I change that class again? Yes, you can. So if we just look at the one we've just changed classes to, we've changed her to a Javelineer. If we want to say, hey, look, that's not quite working out, let's go back to an Archer, we can click the Archer class and just change like that. What that's going to do though is, obviously it's back to the original state. That's going to now cost me another 500 points to change back to the Javelineer. So you definitely don't want to switch them around on a day-to-day basis, but you may just find that, look, this class change isn't working out for me, it's costing too many resources. You can move it back, or you can even move it back to another type of advanced class, but you will have to pay that initial unlock fee as a one-time unlock charge. So I can switch her straight back. As I said, unfortunately it's going to cost me another 500 points, but for the sake of showing this, it's not a big deal. And we've immediately switched back to that advanced class. Right, I hope this has all been fairly helpful. It's quite a new type of mechanic in the game that's going to require a lot of testing to really nut out all the details, play around and have some fun, work out what's going to be better for you in the next season. I hope this has been helpful for you. If you have any further information to add or any other questions, just ask it below.